Hi, hello, yeah. That's right, assuming everything's gone well, this will be the 4th new Luxon video this month that you are watching. You did watch the other 3, right? Perhaps more importantly, if I manage to pull this off like I'm intending, this video will be going public while I am attending MomoCon 2024 in Atlanta, so if you're seeing this, you're also attending and it's Sunday or earlier, that gives you at least one more day of convention at which you could come say hi to me and like half a dozen other Xeno content creators if you would like. Check Twitter for updates. Also, you should follow me there regardless, even if you're not attending, as long as you already have an account. Do not make a new account on that website in 2024. Also, this video does not discuss actual spoilers for any game in the Zeno series, but I will be making a couple jokes about spoilers from Xenoblade 3, so you have been warned. With that being said, it is time to answer an age-old question, a question even older than me, as it dates back to when Project Noah's name was announced to have been changed to 4 letters with Gears after it way back in 1997. Is the name of our beloved meta-series pronounced Zeno, as I have done in every single video up until this point, or Zeno, like what appears to me a minority of English speakers do? Throughout the course of this no doubt very long endeavor, I will seek answers to this question, and finally put to bed a mystery that's been brewing among this fanbase since before the first game in the series, and it's Zeno. Just objectively speaking, it is 100% supposed to be Zeno. If you look at the katakana spelling of any of the titles of the games in the series, which, by the way, tends to be very prevalent in the Japanese logos for each game in the series, you will see that the first 2 characters are the same for Gears, Saga, and Blade, and if you pull up literally any katakana chart, you can clearly tell that those say Ze-no. In addition to that, though the prefix comes from its use in English, as seen by the fact that Gears, Saga, and Blade are all English words, Xeno ultimately comes from an ancient Greek word meaning foreign or strange, pronounced roughly xenos, and, well, that word exists with basically the same definition and pronunciation in modern Greek as well, so if you want to use the original language the prefix came from, Zeno is an appropriate romanization. That is, of course, just talking Greek to Japanese, ignoring the fact that Zeno or Zeno became a common prefix in English as well. Standardized Japanese just has the e vowel in it already without even needing to bring in loan words from other languages, so just going straight to Zeno for that makes sense, but when we're talking about English, depending on your dialect or accent, you might not necessarily have e in your repertoire of commonly used vowel sounds, and just based on that, or your upbringing or other things, you might default to pronouncing xe or ze as z, hence Zeno or Xenoblade. Which raises a very interesting question. Due to the ever-changing publisher and long gap between releases, the series has been localized by a bunch of different people over the years. So, which pronunciation was used in an official capacity on a game-by-game basis? To make things extra interesting, no title of a Xeno game is dropped in a voice-acted cutscene throughout the entirety of the series. The closest to that we ever get is Zenobia in Xenoblade 2, that only being her localized name, most likely being a reference to a real-world historical figure who was fluent in ancient Greek, meaning you're a bit more inclined to pronounce the name as it would be in that language. Also, the name has a different etymology than Xenos in the first place, and Xenoblade 2 was localized by Nintendo of Europe in the UK, and generally speaking, British accents are more likely to pronounce it Zeno than Zeno when compared to North American ones. Basically, we can't rely on in-game material for any entry in the series. This means that just to find something for Gears, we immediately jump into commercials, trailers, and other press releases. Unfortunately for the early series, the titles aren't said a lot in these either, and because there were obscure cult classic JRPGs pre-Operation Rainfall, there isn't a lot of material to work with in the first place. Basically that means instead of doing something convoluted with sourcing all my stuff, there will be a playlist in the description that contains every single video I use as a source for this, though admittedly the vast majority of these are just going to be miscellaneous videos on Nintendo of America's actual YouTube channel advertising the Blade games. Starting off, though, we have a North American TV commercial, extended trailer, something on a bonus disc because it's a PS1 game. We have something for Gears, and despite being purely North American English, this does not only call it Xenogears, but it calls it Xenogears like 3 times and then just says Zeno in the background half a dozen other times without the gears attached to it. So it seems like, as janky as Gears' localization was, they did keep the pronunciation as Zeno from the original Japanese.
Anyone accessing Xenogears Zeno.
As for Saga, our first pit stop here is an absolutely absurd live-action commercial for Episode 1. This appears to be, I kid you not, a retelling of the game's opening cutscene, in which one Dr. T. Masuda discovers the Zohar in Kenya and inserts a silver metal thing that's shaped like it into a hole on a disc that's also shaped like it, causing it to go off and all the funny stuff in the game to happen. In this case, though, we follow some guy who's wearing some sort of work uniform, so I want to say just a janitor looking to clean the place up, but he could be a student looking for office hours, or just trying to rob the place, I guess, going into his office, mispronouncing his name as Masuda, and then somehow having a necklace with the Zohar metal thing, putting it in the disc that's on the desk, which seemingly triggers the Endless Now, and leads into just the usual trailer shots of the actual game, before ending with the glorious, goofy marketing slogan for Episode 1 in North America,
"Let the saga take you."
And you could even see a few frames of the door to the office, proving as canon, I guess in only the localization if we're being real, that Masuda's official profession is some kind of archaeologist. Anyway, he says the title as Xenosaga, making us now have a count of 1 Zeno to 1 Zeno.
Xenosaga, rated T for teen.
In perhaps the most Saga 2 moment possible, I couldn't find anything for Saga 2, despite it being the only game in the Saga series to get a European release, but nope, not even a UK commercial of any kind. And for Episode 3, the only thing I could find was an extremely awkward interview with a QA lead for presumably the localization of the game on IGN's official YouTube channel, 18.2 million subscribers, with 75 views. Also, this video was uploaded in May 2011, so 5 years after Xenosaga 3 actually came out, and several months after Xenoblade 1 released in Japan, so I am not sure what's going on there. Their oldest videos are all positioned around E3 and San Diego Comic-Con of 2008, so still long after Xenosaga 3 released, but what was it doing in 2011? Anyway, the guy there pronounces it Xenosaga.
I'm working on Xenosaga Episode 3, also Sprock Zarathustra.
And this Xeno also continues on into Xenoblade 1. Now, I couldn't find anything around the original UK/Oceania release. I'm sure someone from those regions would be able to find something better than me, but there was nothing for that, so we're going into post-Operation Rainfall here, and on the old official Wii YouTube channel, I guess this was before they folded everything into just Nintendo channels for each region, there are several how-to-play videos for the game, and within like 10 seconds of the first one, the guy presenting it calls it Xenoblade.
And I'm here to talk about the Xenoblade Chronicles game launching for the Wii console on April 6th.
Despite the different localization, Team X seems to go along those lines too, but with a few funny quirks. It's pronounced Xenoblade by the Treehouse employees at E3 2014, which is the first time the game was shown off with its final title and not just Monolith Soft's Project X. But the next time it appears is in the November 2014 Nintendo Direct. And if you're younger or don't remember, back when Satoru Iwata was still with us, he would handle a lot of presentations himself, often even in English. You know how in almost every Direct there are segments that are hosted by either Shinya Takahashi, Yoshiaki Koizumi, or both of them, and not just the disembodied narrator guy? Those are dubbed over. Iwata was just so built different he gave the presentation in English anyway. In this Direct, he and Bill Trinan kept trading off narration between segments, and Iwata was the one to get the Xenoblade X one. But, since Japanese was his first language, he referred to it as Xenoblade multiple times because, well, that's how they say it in Japanese. Why would he change a proper name to something else when he's speaking a different language? Just for the added funny, Bill Trinan actually hosted a Xenoblade X trailer in April of the following year, and yep, he does pronounce it Xenoblade there. So X being referred to as Xenoblade in a direct seems to purely be because Iwata was chosen to give that segment. In addition to that, if you fast forward past the Japanese release date to E3 2015, series executive director Tetsuya Takahashi was actually present for the Treehouse segments, and just to hammer it in, all of the Treehouse employees call it Xenoblade, and Takahashi himself calls it Xenoblade. That being said, 2 months prior to the international release, in October 2015, a certain video was uploaded to the official Nintendo Wii U UK YouTube channel, which somehow has almost twice my sub count, and I'm very upset about that. Anyway, that video was a supercut of a presentation at EGX 2015, which took place like the week earlier, in Birmingham, so get your jokes out there. I think that's a common thing for people in the UK to do, I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, there were 3 presenters there. They had vastly differing accents. Not all of them were from the UK. EGX is owned by the same parent company as Eurogamer, so who knows where they were all from. I'm not good at placing European accents yet. And while I didn't exactly check LinkedIn's to see if they were contractors for the event or full-time Nintendo employees, they all pronounced it Xenoblade. So there are several possibilities here. The first is that Nintendo isn't actually as strict with what you call things as I thought. Like, throughout the entire past few years, it was always the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 expansion pass for the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 game for the Nintendo Switch family of systems, in directs and stuff like that, but maybe you are allowed to be a bit more casual when referring to things, even if you're doing it on the behalf of Nintendo in other contexts. So, like, maybe the restrictions weren't as strict back in 2015, maybe these guys were contractors and not full-time Nintendo employees, so they didn't have to adhere to them as strictly in the first place, or maybe just it's not that strict when it comes to how you would pronounce something in your accent, because while I can't place all of those accents, they're definitely all accents that would normally call it Zeno if just reading it off of a paper and not being paid to present about the game to people. Next up is Xenoblade 2, and I think the majority of times it's referred to in official media are by the usual stable of direct announcers, so of course this one is another Xenoblade. The base game of 2 and Torna also got live showcases with the Treehouse at E3's 2017 and 2018 respectively. Takahashi was at the 2017 one, basically just like with X. He pronounced it Xenoblade. All of the Nintendo of America people presenting, except for the translator and only when talking to Takahashi, pronounced it Xenoblade. However, there is one funny thing here, and that is from the kind of most arbitrary of places if you really look at it. In the September 2017 Nintendo Direct, there was an 8-minute segment about Xenoblade 2. Now, don't get this confused with the 16-minute Xenoblade 2 dedicated Direct 2 months later. This one had a normal Direct announcer. For some reason, the one in the general Direct was voiced by Sean Barrett in character as Azurta. Now, this segment got a lot of criticism for talking about things you wouldn't really want to put in a general direct, like it went over the geopolitics and a few more nitty-gritty things, as well as, I think, spoiling something it probably shouldn't have. So that has its issues there, but also Azurta canonically pronounces it as
Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
So there are official pieces of media in English calling it both things. You may think it's another case of, oh, okay, the UK-based person calls it Xenoblade, and all of the other announcers were American, so they'll call it Xenoblade. However, too, it gets even weirder, because there were a few trailers for Xenoblade Definitive Edition released in May 2020 in the lead-up to the release that were narrated by Rufus Jones, Dunban's English VA, returning to the series after 8 years. And he calls it
the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition game.
Granted, while both he and Barrett are English, they do have noticeably different accents, so I could very easily see one accent naturally pronouncing it Zeno and the other Zeno, but it's very funny that they just don't seem to be mandating any consistency with the pronunciation of the title of the video game when they're so absurdly strict with everything else. You can call it the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition game, or the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition game, but if you remove game from the end of it, you are going to get jumped and chain attacked by half a dozen Turken next time you go out behind the shed. Lastly though, we arrive at Xenoblade 3, and since Definitive Edition was revealed in 2019, then released before summer of 2020, and 3 came out in 2022, we are long past the realm of having E3 presentations, so we're basically just left with the directs, since the Xenoblade series is a bit too T-rated to show up in any TV commercials besides ones that are advertising the Switch itself or a bunch of different games.
Build powerful blades atop living Titan worlds. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Switch and Play, Nintendo Switch, game rated T for teen.
Both the usual direct announcers, pre-release and post-release, as well as the woman who voices the dedicated direct, who I don't think is in the usual stable of direct announcers. I don't watch a lot of dedicated game directs, so she might do other of those, but I basically only recognize her from the Xenoblade 3 one. Anyway, those people all pronounce it Xenoblade, but just like 2, there is one very random and 8-minute long exception. I'm assuming a lot of the people watching this didn't realize that there was a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 overview trailer released on July 20th, 2022, or 9 days before the game came out, because that was also the same day the game leaked, so anyone who wasn't just playing it early with that was going into spoiler hibernation and not looking up anything related to Xenoblade 3. Anyway, this overview trailer is the only thing narrated by someone who does not have an American accent. As a funny aside, I couldn't place this accent the first time I heard it, and I couldn't just look through every single Xenoblade 3 trailer. For some reason it sounded vaguely Dutch to me, so I was like, alright, is there a Nintendo South Africa YouTube channel? Maybe this is some weird South African exclusive trailer, or they redid the narration for some reason. I genuinely couldn't tell if it was that, if it was UK, if it was Australia or Southeast Asia, I don't know. Anyway, there is a South African Nintendo YouTube channel. There was an upload of this trailer there with like 60-something views, but no, this person appears to, on further review, have some sort of British accent, and it has almost 400,000 views on the main Nintendo of America channel. Anyway, this person, who might also be a voice actor from the game, it doesn't sound like Noah. Maybe it's Lance, actually, now that I think about it. Anyway, this is the instance where it's referred to as Xenoblade 3. Multiple times over, even.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is compatible with amiibo figures.
But, yeah. I appear to be vindicated, though. Despite the fact that the true pronunciation is Zeno, the only entry in the series to only be called Zeno is Gears. And that could very well be only because there's one instance of Gears being referred to at all in English in official capacity, so yeah, take that, people who are mad that I call it Zeno. Yes, I did just invent a straw man there. Nobody has ever been mad at me seriously for that. However, if I invent a straw man, I can then shred the straw man, and that makes me very cool. Anyway, the natural next question you're probably asking is, will I do a follow-up video like this regarding the pronunciation of the mascot race for this series? It would be a lot less work and a lot shorter because they're only in 4 games and 3 expansions to those games. Well, no, I'm not going to talk about this. You can very clearly tell just by switching the language of any of the Switch games to Japanese that it is quote-unquote supposed to be pronounced nopon, and this is even more cut and dry because it's a purely made-up word and not based on words that just exist in English and sometimes have different pronunciations. The shift to nopon purely comes from everyone who talks in Xenoblade 1 having a British accent and not showing up in words in that context in British English. It is pronounced quote-unquote properly as nopon in X, where everyone is speaking in American English, and yeah, that's really it. Now, granted, the characters in 2 and 3 who have American accents call them nopon, but it's divided on a world-by-world basis. So, like, if you are in the X universe, you call them nopon, but everyone, regardless of accent, calls them nopon in All Rest and Ionios. This even goes to the point where English exclusive or localization exclusive dialogue exists in Xenoblade 2, where Elma, Shulk, and Rex muse about how the pronunciation is different between their worlds, even if everything else about the little critters are the same. So, you technically got 2 videos in one, And I'm going to go back to doing convention things now. Thank you so much for watching as always. There's not going to be a 5th video in May, but there are probably going to be multiple videos in June. So look forward to that. And until then, this is Luxon, signing off.